Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. So it's now mid-August 2022, and I thought I would do a mid to late summer update on my trees here on the balcony. For anybody who didn't see my last update and is wondering why in the heck do you have all your trees on the balcony, it's a long story and I'll get into that. But for now, let's dive in and I'll show you how everything's doing. Alright, so here we go. So the long story short of this is that my girlfriend and I decided to move in together. Her lease was up a couple months ago. My lease still has till the end of January. So had to move all my outdoor trees over here and fit them onto this tiny little balcony. The good news is I have kind of a cool wide open view here. The bad news is I gotta shove dozens and dozens, or maybe hundreds for all I know, of trees onto this tiny little north facing balcony. Not ideal conditions at all, but we're making it work. We're making it work. I have had a few casualties and I'll talk about that. But for now, let's I'll just start at this end and I'll just give you a quick update on some of this stuff. A lot of these are just kind of cuttings and random ones. This one's cool though. This is a green ash cutting. I'm going to do a little more kind of progression video on this soon, but just wanted to give you a quick look. That is a pretty thick cutting from this tree right here. I repotted this green ash tree maybe like February or March, somewhere around there, and took a cutting right there, that big chunk. That's what that is. Didn't know you could root ash trees, but apparently you can. So video coming soon on that. Here's my wisteria tree. Almost lost it there for a while. So you may have seen in other videos from previous seasons and years, this thing bushes out quite a bit. And it was about, oh gosh, I'd say 3 times this much foliage. And then we had a really, really hot spell. And I thought I was watering it decent enough, but it came out one day and it was all shriveled up. So there's still some evidence here of that. These are older leaves that survived that little ordeal. Let's see if I can find any dead ones. And maybe all the dead ones fell off, but it did bounce back, thank goodness. I would have been real bummed if it didn't make it. So it's doing all right. Now I have had some significant casualties this year. This was just a little Japanese maple, but I'm kind of bummed that it didn't make it. At least it's not looking good. Just started doing this the other day. I don't think it's bouncing back. I'm pretty sure that one's a goner, so I'm gonna put it over there in the goner pile. This is one of my silver maples. So you're gonna see a theme going here. What this appears like to me is kind of a mildew, like that powdery mildew that you get when trees are overwatered or they're not draining right or they're just too moist. So that's the problem out here. See, what happens is the heat builds up during the day and it just holds heat. It gets real hot on the balcony. Like right now it's about 8 p.m. and it's probably 90 something degrees. The problem is that it doesn't get a ton of direct sun. You can see just the edge kind of gets some there. And that spot gets some as the sun's going down. So the trees don't dry out the same way that they normally would, and they don't dry out evenly. It's really hard figuring out the pattern here, especially when I keep moving everything around, trying to make everything fit and making sure everything's got enough sunlight. It's been a real challenge. Not complaining or anything, I'm just saying it has been a significant challenge this year. So I've had a few casualties. This one I think is gonna make it, but it's going in to the late summer now in kind of a weakened state. So hoping for the best there. These are a bunch of corkscrew willow cuttings. Nothing too significant. These are some bigger corkscrew willow cuttings. A few of them. So my big corkscrew willow that was out on the porch, I'll post a picture of it right here. That is along with a handful of other trees, is at my friend Gaurav's house. There were some that I just couldn't fit on the patio, So my good friend Gaurav and Danica, they allowed me to store about half a dozen of my bigger trees in their yard this year. So big thanks to them. Very thankful for that. I trimmed all those trees down quite a bit just so they would fit and be easier to store and transport, and hopefully, you know, require less water. So these are cuttings from that. This is I've never figured out if this is a silver maple or a red maple. Almost lost it a couple times as well. Here's a Japanese maple that's still hanging on. Let's see if I can do this without destroying everything. Okay, so here it is. So this Japanese maple, I don't even remember what kind it is at this point. It's one I've had for a couple of years now. Japanese maples tend to always do this on me. They either get saturated with water and root rot, or too much sun and shrivel up. It's like I can't find the sweet spot half the time. But I think this time I finally found the sweet spot. I didn't completely defoliate it, but I defoliated about 75% of it a couple weeks ago. As you can see now, it's bouncing back pretty good. I just kept it over here in the shade, and for whatever reason, it liked it there. So that's that Japanese maple. Now this was the one that I was most worried about. It is my favorite tree of all of the trees. It is my Shantung maple. But it's doing just fine. It's a champ as always. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you don't have a Shantung maple, you should definitely get one. They have all the best characteristics of maples, and not the bad ones. So like Japanese maples, they're very dainty and hard to get the hang of, at least for me. Not this guy. This guy is drought tolerant, water tolerant, all kinds of tolerant. This thing has endured so much abuse, and it's just going strong. I'm gonna do some work on it here soon, hopefully, if I can get to it, with some of this hardwood. I'm gonna cut off that dead nub right there and just kind of see what I can do to clean it up. That's the Shantung maple. One of my oaks, almost lost it. Took it all the way down to just a nub. I did a video on this and a couple others recently. Well, when was that? Early spring. And I remember even then complaining, like, this thing just always wants to back bud at the base and never grow from the top. So I got drastic with it, and still it did it. It just died all the way back to the nub and grew new shoots from the base. Stubborn little guy. That's one of my many, many Ficus benjaminas. That one is particularly special to me. That one is my kid's tree. I'm kind of its caretaker for a while. Just a funny little thing here. I don't know what this is. It grew from seed. I remember grabbing the seeds at one point, and all I remembered about it is that it was some kind of brown stringy thing. So that's what I called it. It grew to this size right off the bat and just stayed like that. Been like that all summer. Loki, here's another one that's not doing well. Got that powdery, mildewy thing going there. So what I'm noticing with a lot of these willows really is that they're not dying, but they're not really growing. They're just sort of maintaining. I've tried giving them lots of water. I've tried giving them little water. They're just sort of hanging out. They just need more sun is what it comes down to. Now here's one that's doing well. I wish I could pull it out. That is my crabapple tree. That's the one I bought at Costco a couple years ago. Did a major trunk chop on it when I moved it over here. Right there. Sorry it's so cramped. This, you know, I won't be here forever. But anyways, it's doing great. So not much more to say about that one at the moment. Now here's an oak tree that I am particularly worried about. Always loved the movement on this one. Same age as that other one that always back buds at the base. But this one, as you can see, has that powdery mildew stuff going. So I do have neem oil over here. And I sprayed it down last night. I'm going to do it again. I'm told that helps. We'll see. In the meantime, I'm not going to do anything at all that will weaken it. I'm just going to let it be and go from there. Back there is my S-shaped silver maple. Not getting a good view of these at all, so again, I apologize for that. It's just how it is for now. January won't be here anymore. This is one I don't think I've done a video on. I just stuck a bunch of cuttings in here and then I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Stuck a big rock in it. Now I'm just sort of letting it go and seeing what I'll do. Maybe turn it into a penjing or something. We'll see. My S-shaped tiger bark ficus. There. One of my, what I believe is a green island ficus. My juniper, so I was also very concerned about that one. That was one of what I'd call my 5 MVP trees. So I made sure that it got a good spot with a lot of sun. Then I tied it down to this rack here. In fact, let me show you the setup here. So I've got these tables. I've got my racks, and I'm really maximizing the space here. This is just an old shoe rack that I took the bottom shelf off of. And I put one of my racks on top to give more space on top. And that's where cuttings and seedlings go. There's kind of the edge of the balcony over there, so I stuck a couple of trees there. When we talk about efficiency, we are really optimizing every square inch if possible. That was my bush to bonsai Ficus benjamina that I did around November. And then I air layered, as you can see that cut right there, the top half of that right there. So they're still doing great. Let's see if I can get some here. There's my work bonsai. This is another Ficus benjamina. I got lots of Ficus benjaminas. I won't really focus on those tremendously at the moment. One thing I do want to point out, so this is my Siberian elm. I would call it the mother tree Siberian elm. I've had this one, this is my first one, it's the main one, so all other Siberian elms that I have are either cuttings or air layers. So what I did recently was I air layered top of it off, and there it is. I think I did a video on this one, so it's doing great. So I was happy about that. It needed to be done. I did it. It was successful, and they're both doing great. So I'm real happy about that. Here is the third oak, 3 out of 3 that I have. Done a few videos on this. I'll do another update on it, I'm sure, at some point. This one's got the same mildewy problem. Didn't notice it until just now, actually. So that's something to be mindful of. I'm gonna set it there. I'm gonna switch gears for a second. So here is a dwarf pomegranate. This started as a cutting from a main pomegranate that I had a few years ago. The main one died, and this one lived. And I've got a bunch of other little ones that I've kept as cuttings from this. But the reason I'm pointing it out is because A, it's doing great, and B, there we go. Now this happens at the end of the summer every year, but I've yet to actually have the patience to let it go to fruition. It seems like I always cut it off. So not this year. This is the year. I may have to wire it up though, just to kind of hold it up. We'll see. The reason I wanted to point that out because that's at the spot right there. Here is a willow leaf ficus. I repotted this about a month ago, did a video on it. Haven't posted the video yet because I wanted to do some progression clips. So I'll be posting that soon. But as you can see, the difference here in leaves. Old leaf compared to new leaf. It just wasn't growing. So that's why I repotted it. Here's my 2 little leaf Ficus. I did a video on this a few weeks ago. It's bouncing back, and I repotted it, trimmed it up quite a bit. It's doing great. Got that big ugly scar, so we'll have to deal with that sooner or later. My green ash, which we touched on already. Eastern redbud. I'm saying that right, or I think it actually might be an Eastern dawn redbud, maybe. Not sure. It's about 4 or 5 years old. It's very kind of slow growing. Back there is another, that's the Siberian elm forest. Boy, I didn't realize how challenging it was going to be to get good shots at everything. Anyways, not much to look at the moment. It's just kind of maintaining. I just trimmed it up recently. I did repot it as I was moving. Didn't take a video of it because just a lot of things moving and shaking at the time. There's the Amur maple, which is not doing great. Not exactly sure what it is. I think it might have been waterlogged. I don't know. It shows signs of both heat and waterlogged. So I'm not exactly sure what the issue is. So I'm kind of just babying it for now. This is one that I had in a larger pot about that size. In fact, I think that was the actual pot right there. When I moved, I just had to down pot everything, which is kind of sucked, but it was doing great for a while. It bushed out. I trimmed it back a couple of times, and now it's looking like this. So I have noticed with Amur maples that they do that. You can trim them about once, maybe twice a year, and if you do it more than that, they just sort of stop. Sometimes they die, but oftentimes they'll just stop. They just don't grow again for the rest of the year. Here's a good example of one where I did not overdo it. I trimmed it about once, and you can see it's still doing great. Bunch of elm cuttings here. I'm doing this, hold on. Okay, here we go. So this is one of my Siberian elm cuttings. Could be a Zelkova. Not sure if you happen to know. Would love to know. I had a Zelkova and it died. That was another casualty this year. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, another sad casualty. That was my big Katanister. I just repotted it. It was doing great. I don't know what happened. It just died. So that's a bummer. Yeah, I'm very all over the place right now. Anyways, I've been doing a bunch of these S-shaped elms. They're all in development. They're young. We'll let it go for now, for a while. There's another one that I'm doing the S-shape on. There's another smaller one I'm doing the S-shape on. Another kind of S-shaped elm. There's an S-shaped Amur maple. There's my, let me pull it out here. All right, here's my, I call it my loop-de-loop silver maple. So it's doing all right. I was worried about this too. This was one of my handful of MVPs that I was most worried about. But it's doing all right. I always liked this. I might try and do that on an elm, now that I'm thinking about it. Anyways, yeah, I'm happy with how that one's going. This one is a red maple. I got kind of weird with this one. Almost like a literati. I can never say it. Amur maple that I got a little too trim happy with. Just a little olive, nothing to really speak of yet. It's oh my gosh, I can never think of the name of this when I start a video. Anyways, one of these. I wanted to get a good shot here of the dwarf Alberta spruce. It was not looking good there for a while. Then I just set it back here and I just kind of left it alone. Haven't trimmed it, haven't really messed with it at all. And apparently likes not being messed with because it's doing just fine. There's a poplar, a bay willow. Little windswept Ficus Benjamin I'm working on. And then propagation station. So I'll show you a couple of those. Let's start with this one just for funsies. Picked this one for a reason. I switched to this plumbing tape recently to try to fuse some of these ficus together. We'll see how it goes. But I like my little ghetto water bottle cut in half trick. And the reason I like it, it takes up little to no space, and it's got some depth in there, which the roots love, so it helps with cuttings. Now granted, this is before any kind of root work, so keep that part in mind, but it's a lot of work though. It's really manual. You gotta like cut the bottle in half, punch a bunch of holes in the bottom without, you know, destroying the whole thing. So it's a little tricky and it kind of takes a while, but you know, apparently the results are pretty good. So that's one. Let me give you a better look here at one of the fusion projects. So here's one. This one I actually did give some style to and some direction and shape. All right, sorry about that. It is now the next day because my phone kept shutting down because it was so hot. So I decided to just kind of give up last night and try again today. So, get this stuff out of the way. I think this is the one I left off with. Where I was going with that is, you can see, I'm starting to give it a little bit of shape and form, but I don't get too specific in this stage of things. I sort of just give it like kind of a guide as to where I would like it to go, and then I just let it grow wild. I don't get crazy. I don't try to make it look pretty. So that's sort of my thought process with that. Stick this back in there. And somebody asked me recently about my Virginia creeper. So the Virginia creeper is right here. It just happened to be a good spot for it, the way that it's shaped and everything. So it's going well. Let me see if I can pull it out without messing everything up here. Yeah, I can. There we go. Yeah, so my Virginia creeper, it's a vine, but I thought it would make a good bonsai, and it kind of is. I would call it like an accent bonsai. It's not really like, you know, a showpiece or anything, but they're pretty cool looking little accent pieces. They grow these little berries. This one doesn't have many because I've just had to keep it so trimmed up, like everything else. I haven't really had the luxury of being able to just let it grow wild like I would like to do. So had to keep it trimmed up. It really just sat dormant for about the past, I would say, 2 months, month and a half, 2 months, but just within the past week started to grow some new shoots again. So that's a good sign. But for anybody who doesn't know much about these Virginia creepers, they have really cool colors in the fall. These berries turn like purple and red, and the leaves turn really cool colors. So the one negative to these things is that they are invasive. Had a few of them, and at one point, you know, they're a vine, so they stretched all the way down to the ground, and they will ground layer. So once they ground layer, it's over. They start shooting up everywhere. So got to be mindful and careful of that. So that's the Virginia creeper. Other than that, I think we about covered everything. So this is the outdoor setup currently. At least I hope I covered everything. Dwarf Korean lilac here. Unfortunately, we don't have a great view of everything because it's all crammed in here. But this time next year, we'll be in a house again with a yard, the way that bonsai is meant to be done. So bear with me a little longer, and I'll give you some better updates once that happens. So this concludes part 1 of the updates. Part 2 will be coming next weekend, and I'll show you the indoor setup. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.